The spreading of a dangerous pandemic changing the nature of freedom in a society. A totalitarian government using said pandemic as an excuse to lock up its enemies and maintain a firm and tight control on power. An effort within the narrative to actually defund the police. Starring absolutely no one I had ever heard of before, probably because this is a Canadian film, a Canadian story, a Canadian production of Quarantine in 1989. Our film actually opens with seeing a conveyor belt that is bringing people in this industrial mechanized way through a brief trial, so to speak, in a courtroom where they are declared to be at risk, and the conveyor conveniently conveys them out beyond the outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. People that are found to be at high risk because there was a confirmed case and you were nearby, you were close, though you tested negative. We see a whole ocean of human beings who live out there now, beyond the fence, beyond the wires, ostracized. They identify themselves as refugees, people who are not sick and never were sick, but were in close proximity, had loved ones that were. So while their loved ones were relocated to sick camps, these people are relocated to high-risk camps. Conveniently, a corrupt senator named Ford is using this as an excuse to have an iron grip on power, eliminate anybody who doesn't like it, and remove them out by getting them in quarantine. This is not exactly high budget, high concept stuff. The science fiction, the special effects and technology, such as they were at the time, don't even really come into play. Though it was released to theaters, it feels more like a made-for-TV movie. There's not a lot of fabulous acting. There's not really a great plot, but the way that it unfolds is extraordinarily insightful and prescient. Not only is the corrupt government locking people up to maintain power, it is locking up doctors and scientists who protest and say what you're doing is not following the science. Like literally, this is part of the story. Locking up doctors who've been ostracized and condemned for not agreeing with the party line, maintaining an iron grip on power, even using technology. The development of a new piece of computer technology called Apollo means that the population's movements and interactions will be able to be tracked constantly. It makes identifying people at risk easier, makes it much simpler to reprogram and add anyone's name you want to that list, regardless of exposure. It also means you can reduce your police force by 90%, which Senator Ford promises to cut the budget, defund the police by 90% because of pushback from the totalitarian behavior of the police. He's not going to clear up the tyranny, but he's promising nevertheless that he will defund the police. Our group of rebels, including the researcher who developed Apollo, begin to push back. They want to undermine the regime and stop what Senator Ford is doing. Senator Ford, interestingly enough, is named Ford. I don't think it was a reference to any American politicians. It's probably a not so subtle reference to that conveyor belt at the beginning, to that idea of mass production, the automation involved with the Apollo computer that will monitor everybody. I think it's sort of a reference to becoming a machine society rather than a human or humanitarian society. It's interesting that Senator Ford's wife happens to be named Berlin Ford, which again is an obvious reference to the history of totalitarianism. Of course, this is film and it's 1989. Senator Ford ends up getting his because they bring the Apollo thing online at least long enough to add his name to the list of people who go into quarantine. The future of the society is uncertain at the end of the film, though we see some of our rebels arrive with a delivery that appears to be explosives, and you get the idea that the revolution is in full swing. They will destroy Apollo, they will push back, and they will demand their freedom back. You know, not surprisingly, it was very hard to find this movie. I saw it circa 1990, and when I wanted to stream it, nobody was streaming it. Now, of course, there's obvious political reasons why they might have pulled this film, although it was not a huge film, a Canadian production, and there have been several different films with the same name in the years since. But I did find it free on YouTube, a couple different sources actually, but I found a reasonably clear one being uploaded by someone to their YouTube account. The film is very predictive in so many ways. It predicts things that we believed. There was a concern of biological warfare, even in the Cold War, and obviously before. The fear of a pandemic was always sort of part of our culture, but not like it has become, obviously, not like it is now. And so the film really predicts very well, interestingly, not only the events, but a lot of the very lingo, the way it's talked about, the way it's treated in the film, all of these things. You don't care about people. You're putting people at risk. We got to clean it. Follow the science, condemning anyone who disagrees. Well, that's hocus pocus. You're not a real doctor because you didn't agree with the status quo. It's really fascinating how it develops all the way down through the police and the use of a totalitarian technology well before we were carrying around cell phones in our pocket that made the ease of that. Today, Apollo would be the app they put on your phone to track. I can't say it here. I'm probably going to get hit for this video anyway, just because of the title and the content. But the movie is free on YouTube. It's no masterpiece of cinema, but it is definitely a fascinating watch because of the story and the way that it unfolds.